Don't stop me now. I'm having such a good time. I'm having a ball. Don't stop me now. If you want to have a good time, just give me a call. Don't stop me now. Don't stop me now. Don't want to stop at all. Yeah.
Very well done, Kim. Thank you so much. I know it's a little nerve-wracking at first.
It is. Oh, I didn't think I would be that nervous.
But it's fun. It's kind of like, it's construction, it's a podcast, and we're going to talk about health and nutrition and everything. But it's like, yeah, why not?
Let's do it.
I joke about we don't have any budget for theme music or anything like that to open up the show. So I just make all the guests do it. But no, that was amazing. Thank you so much.
Queen's the best.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
No, thanks so much, because I reached out and I was like, I've always been itching to have this conversation. I think it's important.
Oh, so important. Yes.
Because I'm really got a major bone to pick with basically the tradespeople in the industry, specifically men, because I think the women do far better. The men just are like eating crap constantly.
And that, or just powering through and get the job done.
But it's going to catch up to you at one time. And it's like me being in my 50s and I start talking to the 20-year-olds. I'm like, things are going to start to change in your 30s. And definitely when you get into your 40s, you're going to see a change. And then in the 50s, if you're not prepared or changing certain lifestyle things, you're really going to feel it.
100%. So. And I love what you do here, because it's, it all ties together. And I like how you take that mental health perspective and now you're, pulling me in for the nutrition piece, and it all fits together. And if we're not trying to bring attention to these things a little bit sooner, you're going to run into a world of problems.
It's the one thing that will outrun you. You don't want it outrunning you in life, right? So if you're fortunate enough to live a healthy, long life, please make it healthy. Like, really, please make it healthy. It catches up to you. It's not like I'm trying to say that you got to get rid of everything. No. I think you just have to be aware of what you're putting in your body.
Exactly.
Because there's a huge cause and effect. And we all didn't really care in our 20s that we would eat fast food and just junk and throw it in. And then we're like, we're fine. Once you get older, it starts to really kick in.
Yeah, our body's resilient as we're young, right? And we're not feeling maybe the gastric effects as strongly as somebody else, and that's older, or you're not even educated about how it feels, right? About what these symptoms and how they're connected to nutrition.
So this is going to be good. I'm looking forward to this. Let me share your information. So I got Kim Doyle here in the studio at Brant Nutrition. You can find them on IG. Also, the website is www.brantnutrition.com. And to reach out to them, because there's a whole team. We got a whole team here. 519-771-0774. I also want to do a shout out to Sons of Carpentry. Thank you so much for the tea. I've got his. I wear a different tea on every single show when I can, so I give a shout out. If you take a peek underneath the table, you'll see a bunch of teas there that I keep on picking from. Where do you want to? I want to begin with the dreaded. I'm not a fan of Tim Hortons. Period. I told people over and over. If you catch Manny at a Tim Hortons, then look up to the sky, because there's a meteor coming at us, right? Like the apocalypse is happening.
And what's your beef with Tim Hortons?
I don't think the food is all the greatest, and definitely I think the coffee's okay-ish. I mean, I've had much better coffee, and I know that there's a lot of issues. And I know also you don't. I don't know if you're a huge fan of coffee.
I don't drink it myself, but I'm just like really sensitive to caffeine. It doesn't sit well with me. But in access, coffee is definitely an inflammatory. So
I agree. And the problem is that you get a lot of coffee brands that will cut corners, for lack of a better term, and process beans that maybe should not be, or possibly not brewed, and then that's just being consumed by you on a daily basis, if not more than daily, because you're getting tradespeople start of the day, that's their breakfast, so to speak, and then midway in the morning, and then at lunch, and then midway in the afternoon, and then on the way home. And I'm like, that's a lot of coffee, especially if it's bad coffee. Or not bad, but I'm just saying not filtered properly coffee.
Right. And I'm not a coffee connoisseur by any means, because I don't enjoy it. But that's the problem, is that it satiates in one way and it prevents you from actually consuming real energy. And so then you create this diet of coffee, and that will then ensue a litany of gastric issues over time because it's so inflammatory. And so, one of my big things, there's not a lot of foods that I tell people to steer clear from, but one of my big things is don't have it on an empty stomach. Sure, go ahead, have a glass of coffee, but don't have it on an empty stomach because it's like if you've ever seen those videos of putting Coke with a penny in there and it like erodes the penny. I don't see it with coffee too often, but I'd be very interested to see, how does that turn out?
I think I'm going on 20 years that I have not had a soda pop. I mean, I still enjoy my sparkling water, right? And I'll have that. And now I'm on the fence about the whole reverse osmosis and I got to look into that. And I've actually installed it for some clients too that requested it. Right. And then we put them in together for the sink so then you can have that reverse osmosis water there. It's very expensive to begin with. Oh, yes. Changing the filters is really time consuming and money wise. But yeah, I mean, I don't touch pop. Like you don't... I don't get into the pop, but when I was in my 20s, I guess I would have been drinking some pop, even as far back as like Tahiti treat kind of thing where you get the flavored colored pop and all that crap. But I mean, I'd love to get your perspective on why are we, when we're much younger in our 20s, we're almost indestructible? Is it just because we've got such a good, strong, healthy body at that time that we could almost put anything in our body and it will just break it down?
Well, indestructible is a strong word, but it's just like almost a lack of awareness of the impact. So they're not that they're not having symptoms of poor nutrition, but we're in school and we're not educated about the impacts of food immediately, like the physical impacts within a 24-hour period. We're taught big, grandiose concepts about diabetes and obesity and these things that are so far in the distance that it's not really applicable to the immediate moment. So they're not being taught about what we say interoceptive awareness, right, of physical changes within from day to day of how you feel emotionally and how you feel. They're starting to switch it around a little bit, but so not that it doesn't feel great. It's just that we're not aware of it. And yeah, our body, from a muscular perspective, right? We are recovering a lot faster. So, and all of our organs are made of protein, right? So if you think about your ability to recover from a run or an exercise, when you're in your 20s compared to when you're in your 40s, right? So same kind of thing. If you're taking on some inflammation or taking some damage internally, your body's just going to be able to repair a little bit faster than when you're older, that cell turnover.
Can you touch upon, I guess, the food pyramid, like the way we were raised when we were younger and how we were taught about so many things? Like I can't tell you the last time I had cereal. Like I go to the grocery store. You don't see me down that aisle. Like I don't pay attention to any of that.
Yeah, it sounds like you do like a lot of like nutrition.
Yeah, I just pay attention, and I think as you get older, like you just said earlier, how when you eat something when you're younger, you don't feel it as quickly, but when you eat something when you're older, your body agrees or disagrees with it right away, and you know the cause and effect. You know that if you just sit there and have a plate of cookies or whatever, you're gonna see what's gonna happen to your body real quickly. Like you'll see how you'll have that boost, but then you'll have that crash. And so it's like me being in my 50s, I start now paying attention to all these ingredient lists. I started looking at what's exactly in there. And the biggest one for me is, listen, I'm Portuguese, I'm European, so I still love pasta. But I'm surprised on how many pasta makers or packages that are sold have all kinds of crap in it where it's like, I don't want any of this stuff. I literally just want pasta. And you start paying attention to Italians and their culture, how they consume more than Western culture, but yet they're 50% less regarding body issues and obesity and health. And a lot of it has to do with like you eat certain portions, but then you also walk and you are active and you're eating healthier pasta and healthier vegetables and healthier all kinds of stuff. So that does have something. And I'm surprised, I'm not so much surprised, like Canada and US is GMO heaven. Right. And I'm not a huge fan of it. So you start paying attention to a bunch of this stuff where it's like, I don't want that. I don't want to eat that. I don't want to touch that. And there is a difference. Like I have a neighbor of mine, his tomatoes are about to show up, and he's very proud of the fact that he's got a good, maybe 5 or 20 feet long, all tomatoes.
Yes.
And I'm like, let me know, man. Let me know. Because I want to gobble up a bunch of them. I'm like, he doesn't put a bunch of pesticides on them. He just grows them naturally. And I'm like, that's what I remember from Europe. And that's what I like eating. So nothing better than just a fresh garden tomato, and you put a little bit of salt on it, and all of a sudden you eat that and you're like, it's just a tomato. But yeah,
it tastes delicious.
It tastes delicious, right?
Yes.
So I mean, like when you're as a kid, you've got the school boards, you got government, you got people telling you certain amounts what to eat, what's important, what's not important. And it's kind of incorrect as you get older. So I don't know how much it's changed now.
How much it's in, well, they've revamped it back in 2018, 2019. The date is completely not 100% there, the exact date. But so they did revamp it. So what you remember is maybe the rainbow or a pyramid.
Yeah, pyramid.
But since then they went to a rainbow, and then they went to this plate format. So what they're finding the difficulty with something like a daily intake, aim for 8 to 12 servings, or aim for, 4 to 7, right? These are, numbers that are hard to keep track of over your day. So now they've converted over to a plate system so that it's per meal, trying to break it down. What does a plate look like?
Okay.
Right? Which is a lot more helpful in terms of, making sure you're getting all the macronutrients consumed in one meal, and making sure that we're not maybe overdoing one component more than another. That doesn't need to be like as much as we need. So it's much more applicable to the day-to-day life. However, the Canada's Food Guide is designed for average, healthy people, right? And so it's not meant for people with disease states, and it's not, and being Canada, although we're a very multicultural community, doesn't quite hit the mark on multiculturalism in terms of all the different cuisines that we have.
You get a fusion at that point, right? Because you'll get immigrants coming in and trying to bring in some of their flavor and then mix it in with what's going on here. But it kind of doesn't work all the time. Like I've been to certain restaurants where you have these fusion ideas and it works there, but it doesn't work here, and it doesn't work together for the most part. You want to try it. Listen, I love food, so I'll try a bunch of food to begin with, but you also want to still be conscious of the portions and things like that. That's the biggest thing I noticed. Like when I was younger, traveling to the States, and I mean, like the States are the States for a reason, and the portions in the States are just monstrous. Oh, yeah. It's just too much food.
I was just down in Florida recently, and we literally had
you have serving plates that are your plate
of salad. It was salad, and so it's like I get where they're going. Well, it's salad. It's good, but like literally, it doesn't matter if it's a platter of beef and ribs and fries and whatnot, or salad and with protein. Nobody's stomach is that big. It ended up being like 3 meals for us. You know what I mean? Like for myself, like just like, okay, I'll take, 3/4 of this home.
You start sharing it at that point, right? It's just too much at that point.
Yeah.
I'm curious, do you get, I'm assuming that you probably get a lot of people that are 30, maybe 40 and older.
Yes.
Reaching out and starting to work with you, right?
Yes.
But I'm hopeful that the 20-year-olds are actually reaching out too.
Well, I have like 10 years experience in pediatrics. So I have a very large group of teens and young adults that come to see me, because it's just kind of a niche group that I kind of fit in with in terms of just being able to connect, right? So I do have either young families with their young little ones, but then I also have the 30 to 50-year-old parents with their teens that are coming in, or older teens and young adults into the 18 to 22 range that are coming in, and it's becoming more popular because the parents are just more educated, right? And they're seeing what they're doing and knowing that it's abnormal or going to cause some issues down the road in terms of variety, right? If they're just not having a wide variety, and they're like, if the kids are also listening and getting concerned from the messaging that they're receiving, then they're buying into it and saying, okay, let's go see Kim, right? So
are they pretty in tune? Are they like doing their own homework as well too, and trying to get a better sense of things?
That depends on the person. My more anxious kiddos, they're going to be, doing their own research and wanting to do the homework, and the overachievers, they're wanting to get my A+ mark from Kim, right? but then there are the others that are just happy to tell me what to do. You know, like, I trust you. I don't have the energy or desire to go and read about this more or anything like that. You just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Right. So, which is, you know, both angles are,
because there's a lot to, and I mean, we say it in construction all the time. It's like, hire the professional that knows this specific, right? And it's like, okay, you're not an accountant, then hire one.
Yes.
Okay, you're not a lawyer, then hire one. I get that you can build something, but your nutrition and your fuel, so to speak, if you don't know what to take or what to, you know, look for, then hire somebody to do that.
And that's the funny thing is often that people will come and talk to me, and most of my job, I call myself a professional problem solver, because like scheduler, looking at how their life is fitting together. And when we talk about like actual practical action planning, they're like, this seems like common sense. I'm like, but I'm doing this 5 days a week, you know, 8 hours a day in multiple different lifestyle situations. So I've built a pretty large toolbox, like, you know, like
you have the information, right?
Yes.
You basically have the subjects that you've spoken to, lots of people you talk to, and you've seen a diverse range, men, women, and height, short, whatever, tall, big, small. So you've got a sense of people. The
thing with the nutrition, though, that's tough is, I'm sure you guys are coming across it too, are like the DIY videos and all the information on YouTube and Instagram. Like, everybody's a nutrition expert, right? And
it's noise. It's becoming noise now. You're not sure who's telling the truth or not.
So a lot of times, you know, well, how are you going to help me, right? And it's like, well, instead of, you know, picking information from here, picking information there from there, I can streamline it and I can make it your story, right? Like, what's going to work for you in your situation, your health, your social health, your or social history, right? Medical history, diet history, weight history. Like, we're going to take your puzzle and we're going to put it together and create your meal plan. Forget the noise. Right? Let's just focus on you. And, you know, there is science out there. We'll use the science, but we're going to make it applicable to your preferences, to your lifestyle, and something that works for your health goals.
Which is the best, right? Because you're an individual, so we don't know exactly who you are just yet. We need to figure out who you are.
Yes.
And then we can solve.
That's actually one of my like number one compliments that, or feedback that people give me, is like, you just like listen, you know, like, thanks for listening. You know, I felt like this was a therapy session.
But you're trying to figure out the person.
And that's my goal, is like, I don't give recommendations until I get a really good sense of what your day-to-day life is and what makes you tick. Because if we're going to make health goals, it's got to connect to your life values. It's got to connect to your, you know, how you were raised. And so that we can speak to those things so that it's going to be a meaningful mantra moving forward to keep you going when you're feeling like, I don't have the energy.
I'm curious, Kim, what are some of the things that you're seeing repeated, that they come in and they're doing the exact same things that are not really benefiting their health?
Oh, so the, being good during the day, you know, like eating perfectly throughout the day, but or lightly. We're going to eat light. We're going to eat salads, and we're going to eat protein, and we're going to have a small like snack breakfast. And then evening comes and they're ravenous and they just binge all night long. And it's called and we actually have a phrase for it. It's called restrict binge cycle. But it's just, I get where it comes from. There's so much fear mongering in the world of health, right? Avoid this, don't eat that. Carbs are the evil, like devil, and no process and everything like that. Which is, yes, there's a lot of research behind process, but it just creates this low calorie intake, which shouldn't be the message. Our body uses an extremely large amount of energy on a daily basis just to live, to breathe, make our heart beat, digest food, which takes energy itself. That itself is in the 1,500 to 2,000 calorie range. Then you add on you have
to replenish it now.
Then you add on your activity level. right? So a lot of people are coming in eating 1,500 to 2,000 calories and then going to the gym and then working all day on a hot summer day, working 12-hour shifts on 2,000 calorie diet, and they're just binging all night long because they're so hungry and they're blaming themselves. What's wrong with me? Like, I know what I'm supposed to be doing, but I just can't stop myself. And there's like all this self-blame and very harsh critical tone to like how they're feeling about their intake. But what they're not thinking about is the fact that this is like biologically driven. It's not a matter of self-control. This is your body protecting you from starvation. And so before we even think about emotional eating, which is where they always go, I'm an emotional eater, I'm bored in the evening, I sit down and I just can't stop, right? Let's make sure you're fed before we talk about any of that, right? And so that's like one of the biggest things. And even when you talk about like the construction workers' diet, right? Lots of takeout, right? The spacing of it is just so far apart,
it's
right?
True. Yeah.
That, like, they're having something at 5 a.m., 6 a.m. in the morning on their drive-in, right?
Well, it's the coffee, the bagel, the cream cheese, some sort of sandwich or something.
But it's pretty small. Like, when you think about what you're eating for breakfast and heading into what you're about to do, like, it's not balanced for the first part of it. So you're not getting all the nutrients your brain and your body requires. You're getting the energy piece, but again, those sandwiches, like, you're looking at 400 calories, which is on the lighter side. It's not like an extreme amount.
You burn it off pretty quickly.
Yeah. And then they're going no snacking or anything like that. And then lunch is 12, 1, 2, 3, like, they're going well beyond 6 hours. And after 6 hours, your energy stores from a sugar component are gone. They're done. And so now you're breaking down fat and protein, muscle, to be creating energy for your brain and for the exercise that you're doing. And that comes with a lot of byproducts, and that just feels crappy. And so although they're eating these high calorie meals, it's just not like frequent enough.
Yeah.
And then supper comes and there's no thought process. Because when you're hungry, this is like a fight or flight response in your body. So your increased anxiety level, you're irritated, you're like kind of snappy, right? People ask you a question, like, just let me sit. I just need to be quiet, right? And chill and relax. And there's just no patience or even the power for making more decisions, right? This like decision-making burnout, right? At that point of trying to make a decision, it's too overwhelming. And it's like, okay, well, what's the fastest and what's going to get me the most bang for your buck? And that's not coming from being lazy. That is literally your brain remembering what protected you from starvation in the past, because our brain is so good at protecting itself from trauma, right? So if somebody has an actual traumatic experience, whatever helped them get through that, that's going to be their go-to response, right? From protection from harm.
Is it part of, I've been so good all day, all week, that I want to just...
There's some of that.
Okay.
So people that are like very rigid and restricted through their work week or through their 9 to 5 work hours. Sometimes it's a release. Sometimes it's that source of excitement and, an emotional response of now I get to break free and like that, just that moment.
I try not to judge people, but when I hear certain people, I have a beer every night. I kind of look at them, I try not to judge, and I say, do you have a beer every night because you actually enjoy that taste of that beer? Or like, listen, I'll have a Guinness once in a while too, and I enjoy that particular beer. But I don't drink every night. But when I hear someone tell me that they have to have a beer every night, or someone tells me that they have to have a joint every day, I'm like, I think anything that you have to have every single day is a question mark.
It tells me, when I hear that, it tells me that there's a lack of tools in the toolbox, right? Because any one tool can be helpful.
It's true.
But if there's only one tool, then it can become harmful. For example, for me, exercise was my one tool for many, many years. I'm not even 40 yet. I've had hip surgery because I ran the bejesus out of my hip, right? And I didn't rest and I didn't do the rehab because I wasn't an elite athlete, right? And I didn't have the time, still doing my full-time job. But if I had stress, you know, my husband, when the last time you went for a run? You know, like, and I go for my run, I breathe, I get into a meditative state, and all of a sudden I'm able to, you know, function through the things that have been stressing me out, and I come out of that with clarity. But that's one way to get to that spot.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people, exercise is great for you. Yes, if you are able to do it in a way that doesn't harm your body. So it doesn't matter what your tool is. If it's the only tool, it can become really harmful.
I guess it's a variety that you should be looking at, right?
Exactly.
I mean,
and so that was my job in my 30s, was to build a toolbox.
Being in the gym, like I used to cycle all the time outside. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Then you get a motorcycle, and it's not fast enough, so then you don't cycle anymore. But then I used to cycle inside the gym, right?
Yes.
So I'd have the stand where you attach the bike and you
Yes.
do that. But then I get bored of sitting on the seat for so long. So now I'm doing the rowing. Now I do the water rowing, right? Which is actually a lot better. I've noticed it's a better conditioning point because as you get older, pressure points really start to stand out. So sitting on a bike for so long, you start to feel it in your bum and your groin area. You're running, like my brother used to run quite a bit, and it's just knee problems later on. And I've been seeing a lot of people that run, and I'm like, that's a lot of strain, like a lot of force.
Oh, it's a lot of impact on the joints, right? So just to be able to, and if you are, like, there's a lot of successful runners well into their later years, but look at their diet and you look at their rehab program and how much else time they're putting in outside of the running part, and that's what helps them lead to it. And there's also this component of balance, like if they're not feeling it, they don't do it, or they go for a shorter run, or they do something different, right, to make sure that they get to keep doing those things. So really, I do push the idea of balance in terms of coping. So I see a lot of people that complain about emotional eating or have true binge eating disorder and a lot of emotional dependence on food. It's kind of a specialty of what I deal with. And so when I work with those clients, you know, it is about building that toolbox and having some different methods. And the very first question I ask for is, how does it help you? How is the food helping you in that moment? Is it giving you a breath of fresh air? Is it giving you relaxation? Is it helping you distract yourself from,
I think it's a distraction.
For a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know, boredom eating with television, right? My first rule with that is we're not going to just watch TV. We're also going to be having some kind of fidget thing going on while we're watching TV, because TV is passive and it's boring and it just comes at you. And if it's not really mentally engaging, where there's like subtitles and you have to be reading and you have to, you know, be processing what you're thinking about or what you're learning, you know, it's popcorn, and, you know, we associate these things with these foods, but often what I suggest to people is, okay, yeah, have a snack for sure. But if it's an hour long or you know, one of those 3-hour movies,
I know,
you're going to want something else to do with your hands, because that's just a boredom thing at that point. Like, you're just ready for something different. So either break it down into different sessions and don't try to sit through 3 hours of a movie in one spot, or you got to give yourself something else to do, because then you will end up eating for 3 hours straight.
It's so true, because I was just started thinking, if you don't watch and you start reading,
yes,
most likely you're not going to be dipping into a bowl of Cheetos, because you don't want orange stains on your book pages. You can wipe them off the remote. You know what I mean? So it's really just look at what you're doing, and then it's also moderation at that point, right? Like, you don't.
Yeah. Well, moderation in a way of giving yourself pauses. I like to create breaks. So it's really hard to create a break if you bring a bag of chips with you. But then if you enforce a break by portioning it, putting it in a bowl, putting it on a plate, bringing that with you, sitting down with it, experiencing it. This is good. I enjoy the crunch
Realizing
and
that
the
there's
salt
potentially
and
just this amount in the house. We don't have an endless supply.
right. Or you have to get up and go get more,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it just slows you down to enjoy the experience and the fact that you're having it. Because if it's just such a big bag, well, like, first of all, it's opaque. You can't see through it. And it's just kind of like this endless stream, right? You know, the Chicago mix from Costco, right? Like, it's just the never ending fuel source of sensation, which is really what the brain is craving is input, right? Sensory input. So that is an endless stream. So if we just create that pause by portioning it, and then if the next dose is more than 9 feet away, this is 9 feet is the special number.
If it's more than 9 feet away,
you will pause mentally to say, am I hungry? If it's within 9 feet, so you are not far enough from me for me to pause to walk over and grab something that was just sitting out and being like, oh, that looks good.
9 feet, huh?
Yeah. 9 feet. It's a special number. I got this study first year university, and it is ingrained in my head. And I share it with everybody.
It kind of makes sense because you could be on the couch and you'd be looking over the couch and you're realizing the cupboards are further than 9 feet, obviously. And you're like going,
is it worth it?
Yeah, I'll just sit here. I'm okay.
It just makes you pause, right? And so creating pause is really important when we're trying to create breaks with food and eating. Because I will be the first one to say, have an evening snack, right? And that it's okay. It's okay to have an evening snack, but create a snack. You know, don't just grab the very first thing that you think of. Put some mindfulness into it. How hungry are you? What are you craving? What's in your head right now? Because if you try to deny that, then you're just going to keep eating and chasing that taste. So you might as well include it. But how hungry are you? Because to match that hunger, if you ate only chocolate, or if you only had Sour Kids, or if you only had the thing that you were craving, how would you feel after? Right?
So question
your
yourself
mouth
before
would burn.
that. Okay.
You would get like that puckering, like from the saltiness of the chocolate, like, or you would get that like acne breakout later. You would get that sore stomach and that zing, like you're kind of like, oh my gosh, and then the giant crash that comes that you're talking about earlier, right? How would you feel if you satisfied that hunger with just that one craving? And if it's a big volume, then we're going to take that, put it on a plate, and we're going to put veggies, we're going to put grains, we're going to put a little bit of protein, and we're going to make a little goulash of a snack. And you're going to go sit down with it, and you're going to eat it and enjoy it. And more than likely, you'll be done because you've hit all the different food categories, and there's been different textures and different flavors. And
I like that.
Satisfaction is a big part, or taste satisfaction is a big part of overall satisfaction from a meal, right? Not just the nutrient density, but also enjoying what you're putting down, right? So
do you get into the mindset of your clients on why is that item in the cupboard to begin with? So this goes to grocery shopping now.
That comes up naturally. You can't really avoid it. I take an unconventional approach to access. A lot of people prefer to just not have it in the house so that it's not even an option. Yeah. And in the beginning, it can be helpful. I used to be very hardcore about I'm an intuitive eater. This is kind of a trendy thing right now in the world of nutrition. But so I've done a lot of practice, but in the world of starting off, sometimes we need a very big pause. We need a very big 9-foot space to be able to create that mindfulness with the engagement of that food. But over time, my overall goal is that we can have access to everything. Because the idea that something not in the house is now not accessible is a construct of our own brain.
Of course. You'll just figure out how to get it in here.
We could walk 5 minutes in any direction and have access to the things that we're craving. So the fact that not having it in the house means that you're never going to eat it again, that's
not a solution.
A load of shit. Like, part of my
French. I can see people basically going to go get it.
Yes.
And then getting 2 or 3 versions of it too. So now you stock up. So now you multiplied.
Right. Or they see the sale and they're like, oh, there's 3 bags of chips for, $11 instead of one for $5.
That's all creative marketing coming from the groceries.
Right. And so, but now that I've broken the rule, now I'm just going to do it all. And then I'm never going to do it again. Please. That's not the case.
Yeah.
But sometimes in the beginning we do need more space. And so they ask me, what should I, and I do, but I come from the idea of let's add to the grocery list. Let's get more options that are just as convenient. So like I have like a conveniently healthy foods list, one of my handouts that I hand out to almost every single client so that, they have
like alternatives instead of, or
not instead of, but just let's stock these things.
Okay.
Because if you want to make different decisions, you have to have options.
Yeah.
And in this list, it's 0 chopping, 0, cooking, prep work, or anything like that. It's maybe a fridge or a cooler and a hand wash. That's it. And so these foods, and maybe you pay a little bit of a premium for these types of foods because they're going to be prepackaged and they're going to be, individualized or maybe pre-cut at the grocery store. But in the beginning, when you're trying to make changes, having something just as accessible as the things that you're already thinking about is what you compare with those things.
Yeah.
Let's add to it so that we're reducing, again, adding to the toolbox, right? This is one tool that your brain's making you think about, but let's create some other ideas. So that tool, my handout goes right up on the fridge. They don't have the brain capacity to think about it. They look at the list. Yeah, I got that one in the house. I'm going to pair that with my chips, right? So adding versus restriction, because restriction is just long-term is very harmful in terms of mental restriction and deprivation. Mm-hmm. Our body goes through a cycle where we feel guilt and then we restrict, right? So if we're restricting, it reduces our guilt, right? Of the intake of these foods that we feel are unhealthy.
Okay, I got it.
But then we get to this place of deprivation and then we go, screw it. I don't care anymore. Eat everything I've been restricting. And then it's just like this open gate, this flood, right? So what we want to find is a balance of enjoyment and indulgence and then pairing that so that it doesn't get too great. Because if you get to that place of I've been too restrictive, I've been too rigid, and you let it go, then what happens? There's been this big weight loss. Then your body says, oh, she's feeding me. Yes. And so it holds on to it. And then your weight goes up far more than it ever started at, right? Because your body's preparing for the famine.
Yeah.
It doesn't know that it was intentional restriction. It just thought that this is what you've been restricting. If what you were restricting was not replaced with adequate calories.
So why are we and I've done this before too, regarding weight and gaining and losses, right? Mm-hmm. And when you're younger, I was gaining weight because I was gaining muscle, and we know the whole theory behind the two of them, right? Mm-hmm. So, but as you get older, having the weight gains is so much more of a problem on your mindset than having the same amount of increment weight losses. You don't value that 1 or 2 pound loss and why that happened as much as you restrict your mindset on positivity when you've gained 1 or 2 pounds. You're like, why am I up 2 pounds when I should be down 2 pounds? But you don't, it's almost like this yin yang that you don't appreciate both sides.
No.
You need to understand that there's a reason behind the weight gain and loss and what's happening in your body, right? So
it's easy to blame the food.
Yeah.
And that's nobody's fault other than the fact of the way that we've been educated about the weight itself and what weight tells us.
Yeah.
A lot of people will be like, I don't get it. Like yesterday I was this amount and today I'm this amount. I didn't change anything. I ate the exact same thing in those days. Well, weight is based on fluid. It's based on, fluid losses. It's based on, for women, hormone, where are you at in your cycle?
Yep.
It could be a reflection of a change in your health, right? There's so many things that's tied up in weight that just to take one number and say, what did I eat?
Yeah, I know. But we do that.
But we do it.
We do it, yeah.
And where you're going with that, with the mental piece of it, is that we're so afraid of being bigger, right? When really the research, although we don't hear it, the research from that community, it gets buried amongst all the marketing BS that that impact, those small changes up and down are not what we need to be concerned about. The number one health risk related to weight is massive fluctuation. Mm-hmm. Down, up, down, up.
That you should not be
20,
doing.
50 pounds, up, down, massive heart impacts. And this has been known since 50s. Like, this is not new information. But the drive from the beauty department of things, right? Our beauty culture is be smaller, be smaller, be smaller, right? But what comes along with that? You get praise, you get job promotions, you get this perception that you have your life together. So it's not just, being smaller is not just tied with health, it's tied with everything. So when we gain a couple pounds, it's not just, oh no, I might get sick, which is a big part of it because that's what the doctors are touting. But it's also, what are my family and friends going to think? What am I, is my husband going to think I'm beautiful? Is my, there's
a whole world that starts to,
it creates a lot of anxiety about a whole other world that, when I ask people why you want to lose weight, I want to fit in my clothes. I want to feel comfortable in my skin is usually number one. And, the health and they want to say the right things. But when it comes down to it, they want to like what they see. And who dictates that? Well, that's what's been taught to them, right? But you go into a different culture and being bigger is, that means you're rich. And that means so. But
in this culture here, this Western side, I always tell people, ignore that number. Mm-hmm. Like, it's okay to have a scale in your house and every so often check it, but ignore that number. You should really be paying attention to when you wake up, how do you feel? Mm-hmm. When you're getting, through your day, how do you feel? Like I think how you feel is a lot more important than that number.
Yes.
Right? Because if you feel good, if you're breathing really well and everything's fine and you're putting on your clothing and everything's not snug, then things are working well. Then it's fine. Then you shouldn't really have the need to go check that number.
Well, what happens if you had to change your clothes size? How would you feel about that?
See, I used to have that problem, I guess, when I was in elementary school into high school, I was a pudgy kid. Okay. I was just a pudgy kid because I had a sprout. Like, I just jumped. My younger brother was 13 months younger than me, and he's a lot shorter than me, but then I just skyrocketed, right? So I had this huge sprout. So then all of a sudden, when I was training in my 20s, gains were nothing to me. And then you're hanging out with your circle of friends, and all of a sudden you start looking at the numbers of what you're pressing and all this other crap, and you're like, you're growing really quick, right? Then came the supplements and all this other stuff. Right. Never got into the illegal shit, but you start to understand when I started getting into my mid to late 20s, I've stayed pretty much the same regarding size. And I've got this stupid knack on, I still have jeans that are probably older than Angelina, you know what I mean? Like, I have footwear, I have belts that maybe my dogs didn't eat or something like that. I still have clothing that I still, I've got a pair of jeans right now at the stitching place because there's another tear in it, right? I just refuse to let it go, but it still fits my waist, right? Yes. So like, I'm happy the fact that it still fits.
And stability is excellent, right?
But I'm not on the scale. I'm not fighting that battle.
No.
I'm like, you know what? Let me just throw on these jeans and see how they fit. And I'm like, they actually fit. So this is weird that they still fit. So I'm more conscious of when I wake up in the morning, how do I feel?
Yes.
That's what I pay attention to.
Are you sluggish? Are you having a hard time waking up, getting out of bed and rolling out and getting your day going?
And that goes to the dinner before.
Yes. Right? And so when you talk about, when you're asking me to come on and you wanted to talk about the construction worker's diet, right? Getting out of that pattern, it needs to start in the morning. So everybody says, oh, tonight I won't do it. Tonight I won't eat all night long and then go to bed and have the heartburn and have a terrible sleep. Tonight I'll get it together. But I always say it has to start in the morning. It doesn't matter what you did the night before. You have to mind over matter, say, even though I'm full right now, I'm going to eat breakfast.
Yeah.
Right? The other issue though, and I'd be very curious to get your opinion about this, is the mentality on site. Because this is a big battle that I run into, is about creating space for meals regularly throughout the day. Because that doesn't just happen. And what I see a lot is, well, we have a deadline, we had to push through, we had to, or I've worked with foremans, and they just are go.
It's a collaborative mindset on a job site. So
Okay.
I think what I've seen, if there's one or two people smoking on a job site,
Yeah.
by the end of that project, that might double. So there is a lot of that. They're doing it, I'm going to join in and do it. And I take that smoking analogy to the eating part of it too. So if someone goes to the coffee truck and then they buy an overcooked veal sandwich that's been sitting there all morning, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
Even though I love the taste of that, I haven't had one forever. Then somebody else is going to buy that same sandwich, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of get this multiplied mentality where if one's doing it, then the other's doing it, right?
Yes.
I started getting on the job sites where I started doing a lot of juicing. So people were introducing me to ginger and celery and carrot and juicing and doing all that stuff. And then I would get it on the job site. I have my bottles. I pull it out of my thing. And then I would just what are you drinking there? I was going, well, the orange is carrot and the green is celery and the yellow is ginger. It's simple as that. And here's the reasons why, where I started paying attention to, I'm a 52-year-old man going into my 53rd year, and I don't have joint pain.
Right.
So why don't I have joint pain? And I mean, I've been on these juices, ginger, for 5 years now. So it kind of helps me on that point. So you start paying attention to certain things. But then I'll talk to 20, 30-year-old tradespeople. They got plenty of joint pain. But then I see what they coffee, Uber Eats, food truck, and I'm like, that's got something to do with it.
Yes. Oh, 100%. If that's 100% of your diet, right?
Yeah.
Those things in small. So I talked earlier about, not being so restrictive, but if it's 100% of your diet, there's going to be consequences, right? And so one of the strategies that I use when there's a lot of convenience, and actually I use this one with a plumber, was to supplement. So just start with that conveniently healthy foods list. Focus on the fruits and vegetables. Just start packing those. They're actually the easiest ones to pack. Yeah. Just start packing those. And so when you're having the Tim Hortons, when you're having the takeout, we're just going to add these to those meals so that we're now going to get some fruits and vegetables, get some fiber, get some, different components, different colors on the plate. And so it's not necessarily something that's going to take a ton of time. It literally takes 10 seconds. Boom. Into your bag, right? And so let's start adding in. And then as you're feeling ready, starting to make a sandwich, starting to take some leftovers, right? And and building in these behaviors over time instead of trying to revamp the whole thing all at once. I call it baby steps, right? So we're just going to,
it works, though.
just to build up the skill set versus everybody comes to me. Well, not everybody. A lot of people come to me and they will, how many sessions do I need? Well, it depends on where we're starting from.
How long, how long do you want to live? How many sessions do I want?
Yeah. So because they want they want the meal plan and they want they just kind of want this package presented to them that's just going to fix everything.
But is it not, Kim, is it not an ongoing kind of thing as
100%.
you age? And obviously, we haven't even factored in, we have life. So kids grow up, parents pass away, jobs get lost. You have life going on too, which will affect your body and your eating habits. But I also
say to them, if you are in a stable, healthy place and there's not a lot of stuff coming in, yes, there's always stressors that pop in. And I'm always thankful when those stressors pop up while I'm working with somebody, because then I can help them develop an emergency plan, right? Okay, this is how we can deal with these situations, because you're going to get more, right? This isn't the first time and it's not going to be the last time. So so when these events happen, you can start setting up some supports for yourself to make sure that you can stay somewhat on track, right? Yes, there's going to be some dips and valleys and nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect, but if you practice, we can catch these moments earlier. But when they ask me how many sessions, I'm just like, well, I can't answer that for you. You know, it depends on your ability to implement what I'm suggesting, how much support you require to get that one goal going, right? Sometimes one person, I can work on one goal or one action, like literally one action of adding a fruit to breakfast or something like that for 5 weeks. You know, like it can take.
That would make a huge difference.
Right? And so when they ask me how many, I'm like, I don't have a magic ball. We'll start with one and let's see where it takes us, right? But usually, you know, I say a minimum of 3 to get any kind of change, right? To work on one change, right? So if they have a very particular goal, like a very, very particular goal of, I have a marathon coming up in 3 months, you know, I want to fuel for a marathon. All right, let's do that. You know, that's a very specific goal. Yeah. But if they're, you know, trying to address their whole lifestyle, yeah, it's not going to happen in 3 sessions.
That's challenging because you've been doing this your entire life, and now you're expecting a change in a shorter period of time. I'm like, it doesn't happen that way.
And then, well, can't you just give me a meal plan? Yeah, we can, but I'm going to make you come in and learn how to do it because I believe you have the skill set. And then because any of the conventional weight loss type programs are going to give you the cookie cutter, one, you know, solution for everybody. And they go, here you go.
It doesn't work.
They do it for one round, right, of whatever the meal plan was, maybe even just 1 week. And they go, that was too much work because it had nothing to do with their goals other than maybe weight loss. Yeah. Do this and you shall lose weight, or do this and you will gain muscle mass. But it doesn't talk about their preferences. They ask them 2 questions. What's your weight? What's your goal weight? All right, here you go.
See, that goes back to that number thing where it's like, that's not really the goal.
No.
Like,
what's the goal?
I'd rather be healthy and feel healthy and be 20 pounds higher than what people think I should be at versus not feel great and be 20 pounds lighter. I don't understand.
Most of my first session is rewriting goals.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Let's make some more meaningful goals that are going to be something that you can follow for the rest of your life. That's going to motivate you for the rest of your life. Because if you tell me you want to lose weight, that's going to last for however long it lasted last time, if not shorter, because your body gets smarter. Yeah. Each attempt, your body catches on and goes, oh, it's famine. We're in a famine. No, think about the chips. Think about the, think about the carbs, right?
Exactly.
And it's going to catch on a lot faster. And, you know, we call the first diet the honeymoon diet. And because your body isn't adapt to being in a famine. And so you are able to stay in that restrictive, you know, state, that starvation state for a lot longer before your body catches on. And then each attempt after that, it gets shorter and shorter and shorter because your body's like, oh.
And the results are worse.
And because we actually do have access, we're not able to sustain that first phantom weight that we got one time 20 years ago.
You can't, everybody has to stop comparing to what it was in the past. Like, I mean, there was, you can't look at it that way. You have to look at what is present right now, how you're feeling right now, and what your body looks like right now, and you can improve certain things. I mean, that's one of the takeaways that I got from paying attention to Schwarzenegger's Pumping Iron documentary back in the 70s, where he just plainly said that I'm sculpting my body. If I want a bigger deltoid, then I'll just do certain exercises that can carve that section of my body. So he looked at himself as if he was an artisan and he was sculpting his body, which made a lot of sense to me at that point. Because you can do that. If you keep on working your arms or doing something specifically, you are going to see a cause and effect as a result of that. I wanted to get an idea, Kim, from you about how much do people approach you on their own accord, or is it because a coworker or family member has maybe said something that has stuck with them and they're like, maybe I got to do something about it? Or the majority of people coming to you, they're going, you know what, my life is not really going the way, I'm getting older and I'm not as happy or healthy, as fit as I used to be. And if I continue down this road, it's just going to get worse. Are they coming on their own dime, or is this someone that's influenced them to come on their own dime?
The biggest influencer is their family doctor. So there's been some blood work, or the family doctor, they're just going in for a physical, and the family doctor says, you might want to see a dietitian.
Got it.
Usually around weight. Usually they say you should go
high
lose some
blood
weight.
Pressure.
Yeah, they're starting to have some signs of metabolic changes. And so, there's a scare. There's a scare of some sort to get that done. With my younger ones, we're so much more educated about nutrition now. So it's usually the parents that are engaging for the younger ones. But yeah, usually it's the doctor. The doctor is the biggest influence triggering that thought process. Word of mouth is definitely a big component. They start talking, when you're at a social gathering of any sort, nutrition is going to come up. Food comes up. Weight, what are you doing, right? What are you eating right now? Somebody comes in, they've lost like 30 pounds. Oh, what have you been doing, right? So that kind of word of mouth is a big one where, oh yeah, I was trying this, I was trying that. And so then they start reaching out and thinking about it that way. From a personal perspective, obviously I do get those, but I would say probably talking about it in a group generally is, or with their family doctor, or I get, because of my specialty in mental health, I get a lot of referrals from psychotherapists and social workers and that kind of idea.
Because it's contributing, like their diet.
Yeah,
their
because
nutrition.
they're very hand in hand. If you're not eating well, your mental health is not doing well.
Yeah.
But if your mental health isn't doing well, it's a big barrier for eating well. So they go very hand in hand. So I've been working hard on training my local community about the importance of nutrition in the role of optimizing mental health. So that's a big referral source for me as well, more locally. So yeah, it's definitely something people just talk about constantly. Social media, right? People are scanning through social media all day long, and it's planting little seeds, right? Of, oh, maybe I should be thinking about this. Maybe I should be thinking about that. So they Google a dietitian, right? And if they're,
there should be a disclaimer on social media, like the cigarette packaging, where it's like, people should understand photography and perspective on social media, understanding that if you pose a certain way and angle a camera a certain way, you will look and appear thinner and as if you're healthier, but technically you're not.
Yeah. And that's what I say to people all the time. Like if I'm doing group presentations, you look at me, you're going to think I'm really healthy. But within this cover is a broken skeleton. Like I am broken. And I say that all the time to people. I'm like, you can't judge a book by its cover. You see somebody in a larger body eating a Big Mac or eating fast food in the food court. What do you think? Makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? You see somebody, average, smaller body size eating something like that. Oh, they're lucky they can eat whatever they want. Right? So like
we don't know. Yeah.
The perceptions are very off, right? And you don't know. Is there a lot of people out there in larger bodies that are sitting above their set point, their genetic set point, because of their diet or exercise and lifestyle? 100%.
Of course, yeah.
But there's also a very large, you will never convince me that everybody is supposed to be in the average normal BMI range. You'll never convince me of that.
It doesn't exist because every body is different.
Yes. And so like you have somebody walk in who's over 6 foot. Oh, well, you're over 6 foot. You might want to think about being smaller because you might get back problems. Would we ever say that to someone?
No, you wouldn't say that.
Oh, you have blue eyes? Oh, well, a pale skin? Oh, you're at higher risk of cancer. So you might want to work on that and go to the tanning beds and start getting a darker skin color. We don't say that. So there's this genetic disposition for some people to be larger. And in that, you're going to have a disposition for having heart problems. You're going to have a disposition for having pancreatic issues because you're fueling a bigger body.
Yeah.
But there is a massive body of research showing that people in larger bodies who eat vegetables and fruit, who exercise on a regular basis, who don't drink, don't smoke, are at the exact same risk of death than somebody in a smaller body.
It's
so why
totally
are
true.
we focusing on the number?
Yeah, exactly.
Let's focus on the behaviors. And so that's what I say to people when they come to me for weight loss is like, you might, and they ask me, well, what should I be? I'm like, I don't have a magic ball. I don't know what that number is. I'm not going to weigh you.
Yeah.
I'm like, we might talk about your weight every 3 months because I'm looking at patterns. I'm not looking at day-to-day 1 or 2 pound fluctuation up and down. That means nothing to me. What are we looking at bigger spans of time? And, is it trending downwards or upwards? But if you are doing the things that I'm guiding you towards doing and your number goes up, does that mean you're doing something wrong? Or is this where your body wants to be? And that can be a scary conversation for some people, right? And so I often say in the beginning,
friends, like, my weight's gone up, but I feel better.
Well, there's a lot of shame associated with that, right? Or their doctor sent them to me to say, you need to lose weight. But that's often, I don't want to say that happens with everybody. That definitely doesn't happen with everybody.
Yeah.
But it can happen, right? And usually those people were coming to me in a very underweight place, right? So,
I'm sorry, you were about to say something about, you often tell people about the weight thing if it goes up a tiny bit.
Oh, yeah. So if it goes up a little bit. So when I first start seeing people is I say 100% right now, you need to stay off the scale. Because if there's somebody that's been weighing like daily or weekly or monthly even.
It's a bad move, yeah.
Stay off for now, because if you're the kind of person that has not been eating frequently, has been having big, giant gaps in between time, my job is to boost your metabolism. It's not boosted day one.
Yeah.
Right? And so if we're trying to boost your metabolism, tell your body to function at its highest capacity, we have to fuel it first, right? And when people are saying, well, I want to start exercising, I'm okay, let's energize you. Let's fuel you up. Let's top you up, right? Let's get the iron stores stocked. Let's get your sugar stores stocked. Let's get everything stocked up. And then let's see if that energy just naturally comes, right? Because all of a sudden you'll be buzzing. Right. And
you'll want to
do because you'll just be like, I'm fueled. I'm ready to go. And I teach people how to feel fullness and how to feel that hunger. So we're catching it sooner. So instead of being these highs and lows of energy, dips, right? We're just kind of like this even keel. And so where you have people coming home and crashing at the end of the day and having zero energy for their family, right? Then they're coming home and they're going to be tired, but they're not going to be moody and they're not going to be exhausted, right? Lethargic, where they can't even fathom doing another thing. And not to say we don't have those days, but there might be a few more energetic days, right?
Well, the idea is to build a reservoir. Like you want to have some energy at the end of it, right?
Yeah, you got to build up and fuel for it. And then all of a sudden, now I'm going for walks and now I'm doing this. And right. So it becomes a lot more organic. So in the beginning, big tangent there, you might gain a pound or two just from stocking up.
Which is perfectly
fine.
And
there's also a fluid change, because your body's not used to receiving nutrients all the time like that. And so it's going to hold water to balance out the concentration of nutrients within your bloodstream, right? In your tissues. So there's often, that small shift, but if you're not weighing yourself, you would never notice it. It's just because people are on it. Oh, I'm feeling so good today. Let's check my weight. It's up a pound. Oh, worst day ever.
I know.
And it's like, poof, it's just like, I haven't weighed myself in, I think I'm going on 4 years. The last time I weighed myself, now I'm coming from a place of, some disordered thoughts and body image issues. But the last time I weighed myself, I was, feeling good. You know what? I'm going to challenge myself. I'm just going to stand on it, and it's not going to matter. It's not going to get, this was a personal goal of mine. It's just a number. Ended up in the fetal position at a hotel room next morning being like, and I was feeling good, and that's how much an impact of a number. One number, right? And it just and that's not everybody, and not everybody's like that. And there is a place for weighing people. I'm not saying I don't ever weigh people. There is place for it. But you have to have the right kind of person that is seeing that number. And for a lot of people, it's not healthy for them to be seeing the number all the time.
I agree.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about fads. And I know that, what's the latest one in stupid Hollywood land? Ozempic? Is that the one?
Yeah. Yes. I've I've gone through emotions about Ozempic, to put it
Have people
politically
approached
correct.
you and spoken to you about this?
Oh, yes.
I can assume, right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
So it's a drug, so I'm not a drug guy,
Okay.
right? So it's just I don't agree with it, but apparently you've got a lot of these celebrities that are influencers taking this and saying that they're really happy about it. And but I mean, like, okay, it's still a drug, so there's got to be a cause and effect or kind of thing. So I don't know. So I mean, we've had a bunch of fads. Like everybody's, I guess the Atkins diet back in the 80s or 90s or something like that.
Yes.
So there's all kinds of diets. Like people have designed certain things to help you. Does it work? Or I don't know, right? So what are your thoughts on fads and nutrition and health? And
Fad diets, it's different than Ozempic. So I'm just going to say fad diets, if they worked, there would have been one.
it's true.
If you look at the timeline of fad diets, it's one every decade, right?
true, yeah.
That we go through our fads, and it started all the way back in the 20s, right? So, and if you follow that timeline, it just gets more squished together over time, right? So instead of 10 years of a fad, then we're looking at a year or 2 years, right? Now, more recently, right? We're going from keto, and then we're going to Whole30, and then we're going, like there's just one every year, one every month, right? Like there's just so many. But if any of them worked, they would have just that one, right?
Yeah.
But the reason that they don't work is they're too restrictive. They're missing whole macronutrient groups or entire groups of food groups, right? And that's not sustainable for our body. Our body needs 3 macronutrients. And if you don't consume them, it won't be happy long term, right? So, and there's nuances to that. I know maybe in the nutrition world, I'm kind of getting ruffling some feathers right now by saying that. But there are, when you take any fundamental nutrition course, right, it tells you what the body requires.
Yeah.
And number 1 on the list is carbohydrates. So, when we take entire macronutrient groups out, we're going to miss out on not only the energy source and how it fuels our system, but also all the micronutrients that carries. And so then you have to take supplements, and then you have to take all of this. But food nutrients were meant to be absorbed together. And synergy is a big word that gets lost in translation sometimes of, we could take a bunch of supplements to replace everything that we're not getting in a fad diet, but that's not really how our body was designed to
Your
absorb
body doesn't
those foods.
absorb supplements
Right.
the same way.
They help each other, right?
Yeah.
Different nutrients like vitamin C helps with the absorption of iron, right? So you could take vitamin C supplement and iron supplement together to help that. But what if we just added oranges to your salad full of spinach, right? Or, what if we use tomato sauce with your beef stew, right?
Yeah.
Like to help with the absorption of the iron from that. So it just works a lot better coming from food. But with the Ozempic piece, from that, at first I was very, on guard, right? Just kind of
Because it's like a miracle. It's coming out as a miracle, right?
Right. And the length of time that it's been available for long-term studies is not there. Other similar drugs that came before Ozempic had a lot of issues long-term in terms of cancer. So I was on guard, right? And I'm still on guard in terms of, let's see what the data has to show, right? And then the impacts of it, the way that they're using it for diabetes, which I think is 100% appropriate, nobody wants to be taking medications, but if you have diabetes and it's so far progressed that you need a medication, then yes, this can be one of those. But the dosage that they were using for that is much less than what they were using for weight loss. So not only is it now being used off label, but they've, doubled and tripled the dose to make it that more effective, right? And so when I'm having people on that, I'm literally treating these clients with like as if they've had bariatric surgery because their appetite is so low and so poor that we have to supplement with micronutrients to make sure that they're not going to get deficient in vitamin B12, iron, and these really big important nutrients that have a lot of roles in our body. So not only are they paying out of pocket for Ozempic, which is like a mortgage payment, then they have to on top of that supplements, right? I've heard stories, and I've had a few clients where, you know, they're struggling with major binge eating disorder issues. And I've heard multiple anecdotal stories now where they were able to get off it because it gave them the pause.
Okay.
It gave them the ability to feel fullness. Because a lot of people are like, I don't know what that feels like. I never feel full, right? And so with Ozempic, it taught them how to feel full, which was some interesting facts. But that's not the story for everybody, right? That they're able to get off of it again, right? So
is the study with Ozempic, if you get off of it, are you going to gain weight again?
That's the perspective. Once you're on it, you're on it. Because if you
stop,
then you're going to gain the weight back. Right. But in some anecdotal cases, you know, they're getting off of it, but now they're able to eat, you know, regularly throughout the day, portions that don't hurt, right? That's not making them so full or causing their organs to work overtime to digest all of that volume of food. And so they're able to sustain or maybe just gain moderate amount back. It's not the whole amount, but they balance back out, right, into maybe where their genetic set point is at that point. So I'm starting to hear these stories, which makes me think, maybe there is this place for it, but from a scientific perspective of long-term use and how is that going to impact, that's my concern, right? Because, there are, and the risks associated with it, gastroparesis and these major gastro issues because what it does is slow down your digestion system. And if you ask anybody that has gastroparesis or really slow digestive systems, if you would voluntarily sign up for those symptoms,
you don't want to.
They would say 100% no, don't do it. Right? It's painful.
Are you talking about Crohn's?
No. Gastroparesis is where your gastric tract stops
your GI
moving.
tract, right?
Yeah. So there's this muscle wave pattern that pushes through food, right? And in gastroparesis, it doesn't work as fast, and so food gets stuck in the stomach, and it doesn't get pushed through properly, and it gets stuck through here. So constipation, massive amounts of constipation. It's a very big issue. And this is what is being induced with Ozempic. It slows down the digestive system. So when some people, not everybody, but some people are having extreme amount of nausea, and because food gets stuck there,
but they look great.
But they look great. So
I don't think I'll ever buy into it. I'm just concerned about it. That's fine.
And I will never judge somebody for deciding to go on it. I get it. I get what goes on behind that decision, right? There's a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of guilt and shame and
But Hollywood is to social media, to vanity, to going out.
And ease. Oh, it's so convenient. I don't have to change anything. I don't have to do anything. I think the people that do it the right way is those that take it, but then they are seeing a dietitian and they're trying to, or maybe seeing a psychotherapist.
They're being supervised.
They're exactly, yeah. and they're looking at it from a lifestyle perspective. But there's a lot of people out there that are just using it as a fad diet, right? And that convenient, why isn't the word coming to me? But the ephedra type, the speed drugs that you used to take in the past for weight loss. And so there's a lot of different weight loss medications that's been out in the past over time.
But isn't it not
right?
Kim, are we not kind of trying to want to dumb it down where it's the food that you eat?
Yeah.
If you eat it poorly, it will compound over time and create the problems that you have today. So to reverse it, you have to start, and it's a long process. It's not an overnight kind of thing.
No.
But we're human beings, and we have a lot of cameras watching us.
Yes.
And so we want something that's a quick fix right away, and it doesn't work that way.
No.
Like if you want, you can fast and cleanse and just go on a water diet. And so you could look perfect for that wedding photo, but you're going to be lightheaded and you're going to be like smelling all this food and you're not going to be in the best of mental state.
No.
But you'll look great on the camera, but that's not really a good thing.
Do it for the gram. Yeah. No, it's not. And I'm not, I'm definitely not encouraging it. Like I'm not, when people are coming to see me and they've been seeing me for months and they're not seeing change in their weight. I'm not the one that's going to be going, okay, let's take it to the next level, right? I'm not going to be that person because I believe there's body diversity. So if you are doing everything you're supposed to be, okay, well, let's check in on your blood work. Is there a reason? Is there a cause for concern that your weight isn't changing?
Yeah.
Right? Are we seeing your cholesterol levels drop? Are we seeing your blood pressure reduce? Are we seeing your blood sugars levels coming back into normal range? So that there's more than just one number to prove that things are working. It doesn't work. This diet worked because my weight dropped on this diet. Do you think I should go on that diet again? And I'd be like, okay, well, like you say it worked, but for how long, right? It's not sustainable. So you're right. It's the approach needs to be taken, a lot differently. It's just really hard for people, I think, to be patient. And sometimes, depending on their current medical state, they don't really have the time. They are in a very high pressure situation they have full on metabolic syndrome and they have the diabetes, they have heart problems, they have liver problems, right? And everything is changing. And so for those people, they're running out of time, right? Which is sad, but hopefully, with changes to the way that we talk about things, not that that's coming anytime soon, but if we could, then, we would have people that have a lot healthier relationships with food, where they're creating that balance from a young age. There's some really great research in the intuitive eating world about when people, there's something called the intuitive eating scale too. And when people use this in research, it's shown time and again that the instances of binging and using food in that way, or having more balance in their diet, more vegetables and fruit and whatnot, is more associated with people with higher scores of intuitive eating, meaning they have a healthier relationship with food and body, right? So not eating for the purpose of weight loss, eating for fueling purposes, eating for very neutral position versus guilt, shame, weight loss, right? And it's shown, the research is growing. There's hundreds of research studies now, and it's a very big growing body of slowly converting new dietitians and nutritionists over into this world because it works. It works when we release all of that pressure, right? So to lose weight.
I guess the good thing on the west side of things here, being in Canada and the US, is there's lots of subjects here to test all this stuff on.
Yes, there is. Yeah.
I mean, we do, for the most part, like I'm still dumbfounded on how many products are actually sold. Like when I start hearing about certain countries, that they don't sell 7-Up, they don't sell energy drinks, they just ban all these things, right? And I'm like, okay, so why are these things still legit? And then there's that old joke in the grocery store where you go to the health food section, where technically speaking, the whole store is supposed to be a health food section.
You're right.
But it's not, right? No. Because we have all those, binge products out there.
Yes, they're very highly addictive. Yes, they're designed to be very yummy, right? So.
How do you handle, I guess, my niece was a vegan for a little while.
Okay.
She was a vegetarian for a little while first, and then she became a vegan. She's no longer neither now.
Okay.
But this would have been in her late teen years, I guess. And and then also my other niece, she went vegan. She's still vegan, and she lost a dramatic amount of weight, and she's healthy and feels great. I'm not a vegan. I'll never be a vegan. I'm a meat person. But how do you approach someone who is a vegan that comes towards you, and then who's someone that is just heavily carnivore, and just, they come approach you and they go, okay, how do I handle my nutrition now? Right. But I don't want to veer off vegan, and I don't want to veer off carnivore. So how do I handle this?
I always start from a place of balance. are you, despite your dietary choices, whether it's personal, religious-based, cultural-based, whatever or health-based, right? Whatever you have decided to do, are we somewhat loosely, meeting your caloric requirements, right? Are there grain sources? Are there a significant amount of protein sources? There are fruits and vegetables. And how are you plating that, right? And how often are you eating throughout the day? So that's where I start. It doesn't matter what the dietary beliefs are and choices at that point. That's where I start with everybody.
Okay.
Are you getting enough?
Okay.
Right? And is it...
based on your body type and who
right,
you are,
your
right?
activity level,
Yes.
your health status, right? So I start with those questions of figuring out who is sitting in front of me right now. But then when we start looking at, next steps and making those first goals, are you eating enough food on a regular basis with enough variety, right? And sequentially working on it in that exact order, right? Are you getting enough? Right? From all the different macronutrient options. And then are you getting it regularly? So again, trying to fuel regularly throughout the day to avoid these extremes of energy dips. And then let's work on the variety last.
So I just assume the vegans might not be getting as much protein that they do need, but then the carnivores might not be getting as much micronutrients that they should be getting.
Yes.
Is that basically what's happening?
Yeah, it's very common that vegans are dealing with deficiencies in the world of protein, iron, vitamin B12, things that you can only get from animal sources, and then enough protein.
Yep.
Because they're adding it, but vegetarian sources, plant-based sources are harder for us to absorb. Right? So where we're absorbing, the full amount from protein almost, animal sources, plant-based sources, we're getting about 80%, right? So your portion of protein needs to be quite large for a vegan, but a lot of plant-based sources of protein are really hard to swallow, like a big serving of it, right? Like think about
to get
eating,
the amount that you need.
Yeah, like think about like if you had just one plant-based source, for example, hummus, right? If you were in a hospital because it's very, standard diets
How much
or whatever.
hummus would I have to eat?
1 cup of hummus to match a serving of animal protein. So think about eating a cup of hummus in one meal.
Yeah.
Like that's a lot of hummus. So
I love hummus, but that's a lot of hummus.
So I often have to work with them to get more variety of protein on one dish, right? We're going to have beans and we're going to also have soy and we're also going to have rice. We're going to have it from the drink. We're going to have it in solids. We're going to, and every time you eat from a snack, you're going to have protein, right? So it just needs to be such a big focus and there needs to be a lot of planning. Whereas a carnivore diet, typically there still is some carb there, I'm thinking about my construction worker, your macho masculine
Brant.
guy, we got our meat and potatoes, right? And then there's like that quarter teaspoon of veggies in the corner, right? So whatever's left over, right? So you got, your half plate of steak or, your chicken that's taking up a lot of space. And yeah, there's not a lot of room left over for vegetables on the plate.
I will say that in the construction industry, I am seeing a lot more people cook home meals and cooking twice as much the evening before.
Yes.
And the leftovers become the lunch for the next day.
And that's my number
which
one
is great.
strategy for lunches
Yeah.
is cook more. When you are already in the kitchen, don't make a third or fourth thing that you have to do in the kitchen. Do it when you're in the kitchen. Already cooking supper. Just make more of it, right? So that it's not another thing that you have to do. When we talk about meal prep and those types of strategies with people, stack it on a time when you're in the kitchen. You got a lull point, you're waiting for something to bake, you have 20, 30 minutes, right? Instead of just standing around or like what do we do? We end up picking at things kind of waiting. Chop up a cucumber, right? Like make that salad or, don't dress it, but, do some chopping, right? But you're already there. So it doesn't feel
you're waiting for something. It's true.
like it's another thing on your list of things to do. Stacking behaviors, healthy eating behaviors is a really more convenient way to get into a routine without making it substitute or making space for another thing. You're already there, right? The big thing too with like skipping breakfast or whatever, it may not be as applicable for some people in the construction world because they're gone maybe before their kids wake up, but using your kids as motivation to stop and sit down and eat breakfast. Because if they're not seeing the adults do it, you're unintentionally teaching them that when you get older, you don't have to do this.
Yeah.
When you get older, you get to sleep in longer. You get to, focus. Everything else is a higher priority, right? That's not the message we're meaning to send. We're telling them breakfast is important. Breakfast is the most important part of the day, right? We're forcing them, come eat, come do something. We're getting upset if they're not doing it, right? But what are you role modeling?
Yeah.
Are you standing there, drinking a coffee and making their lunches? And, you don't have to be there the whole time. But when people are giving me the excuse of time, right, that there's not enough time to do something, okay, well, what are your kids eating? Oh, they're having this. Okay, make one for yourself.
They're paying attention.
Make one for yourself, but maybe a different, the style of it. You don't have to sit there the whole time with them because kids can take a long time and kind of play off and, take forever. But eat, right? And sit because we're at the counter, we're eating this, we're doing that, we're multitasking all these things, right? But multitasking and eating is just like TV and popcorn, right?
Yeah,
so we need to role model it. And it's a great extrinsic motivator, right? It's a great outside motivator when you're not feeling motivated to make that change. Because starting breakfast is a really hard sell for some people, right? Like, I just need my coffee first. Let me have my coffee, right? Okay, well, let's have coffee, but let's have something with it, right? Let's add on.
That's a whole marketing thing. Coffee. Like, the best, the Folgers commercial back in the 60s and 70s, the best part of the day is Folgers in your cup.
Yeah.
Like, it's a marketing kind of.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess the milk was the same thing. There's just all kinds of marketing initiatives that worked really well, and it convinced people to go down this path. Right.
And then sometimes it's just a thing of it helped. Right? It helped them get through that really tough transition of, all of a sudden my kid's in school and now I'm having to get them off and doing things or becoming a parent in the first place, right? Where there's a lack of time for anything, you're not sleeping, you're sleep deprived and you're exhausted all the time. And that coffee just perked me right up and it helped, right? But long term, when you look at it, right, what are we teaching them with our behaviors?
Yeah.
Right? And so when you're not feeling motivated yourself, for that this could be helping you, well, let's what are you trying to teach them? And let's actually role model it. Let's not just say it. And that's where I was wondering too, from a construction point of view, how you're saying like it's a mob mentality, like one person's doing it and then all of a sudden, 3 or 4 other guys join in. Mm-hmm. What would be the impact if from an environment perspective and a policy perspective that if a construction company is saying, because I've seen the difference, right? Unionized guys versus ununionized. Yeah. There's structured breaks and they're eating all regularly throughout their breaks and they get their breaks and they're going to have their breaks. But in these more private construction companies, right? What are the policies? Are there structured lunch breaks and are they thinking about that when they're creating their plans of how much time something is going to take? Because food doesn't just happen.
The unfortunate thing is what I'm seeing is a lot of the younger generation will take a break when they need to take a break. And that's the problem. Is like you can't physically keep on pushing yourself just to achieve a certain detail of scope.
Because physical activity itself is an appetite suppressant.
Yes.
So you're not going to feel that hunger in that moment just because you don't feel. I have this conversation with people all the time. Not everybody feels hunger, but that doesn't mean your body isn't hungry.
Yeah.
It just means you're less in tune with those cues because not everybody gets tummy grumbles. Not everybody gets it. So, but what are the mental state? Are you starting to feel rushed? Are you starting to get irritable? Are you starting to get tired? Right? And this is where, and then they start paying attention to it and they're like, Kim, yes, you were right. And then they do it for the way I asked them to do it and they miss once and they skip a lunch and they're like, oh my gosh, it was the worst afternoon. It was so terrible, right? So I'm wondering, if there was a little bit more from the top down about the importance of taking breaks.
You can express it. but it doesn't absorb. That's the problem about it, right? And you can only just...
But what about the foremans, right? The people that are on site, or the people that are there working and saying, nope, guys, before we start this task that's going to take us 3 or 4 hours, we're going to take a lunch break. We're going to take a fuel break, because if they're pushing through and saying, let's get it done, then where are those breaks happening?
I think it's the role model angle now, because like, I don't say it all that often these days, but I kind of just look at the 20-somethings and I'm like, dude, I'm in my 50s. Like, I had a kid not that long ago, 18-year-old kid who was huffing and puffing while I was doing the exact same task. And he was complaining about asking for a break. And I'm like, I didn't judge, I didn't say anything, but I'm just like, this is a little interesting. If I would have dove into it, I'm probably sure I would have found out energy drink, possibly smoker, and not understanding his body or what his body's trying to tell him. So it's like they're depleting their energies elsewhere and they're not focusing their energies at the task at hand. I think the more physical things you do, like yourself, like as a runner and all kinds of things like that, I became a better driver because I was a motorcyclist. But I also became physically better as a motorcyclist too, because you're using your entire body to ride a motorcycle. So it's like the more things that you can do, those kinds of ideas, like I would never go dirt bike riding because I've seen the share of guys and the knee problems that they have because you're constantly on your heels. So you're literally, your knees are just struts while you're going through the worst environment. So that's why I'm like, I'm not touching that stuff. But if you've got a 52-year-old man handling himself well with a 20-something and the 20-something's having a problem, then you got to question, what's the 52 doing that you're possibly not doing? Listen, I'm no angel. I still drink alcohol. I have a lot of meat, and I occasionally exercise, not the way I used to exercise because I'm not there at that place. But I also am not on supplements and I'm not on drugs. I'm not on anything like that. And I want to continue that path. So all I do is, as I get older, it's a cause and effect. What I put in my mouth, what I eat, I could feel my body process or not process it well. It tells me, my body tells me right away, that was a bad move, this was a good move, and shit like that. And that comes from smoking a cigar every so often. Like, I've had 3 this year. It's July, so it's not that bad. I was offered a bunch in Turkey, but I didn't, right? And there was offered cigarettes all the time in Turkey, right? And I'm not a smoker of that, right? But you do in construction, you see a lot of those guys, and I think a lot of people, maybe side on the women's side, they'll smoke cigarettes for the appetite suppression.
Oh, the diet culture side of things is impacting men just as much as women is now.
It is.
Right? The expectation to have an 8-pack, the expectation to, have
8?
Well, 6-pack, any kind of pack, right? The superhero look, right? So, it's out and just,
you can get that by
Instagram
renting a suit.
Right. Well, we even say that. Like, I've seen, people kind of question, right? Are we teaching our boys the right thing, right? Because you get them a superhero suit, and it's boom, 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 right? That's got the muscles sewn into it, right? And if we were to do that with a young girl, to look like a superhero, like Black Widow, right?
Yeah.
And you put in boobs and you put in, the hips and made it contour like that, it would be a huge issue.
Yeah.
That would be a massive issue.
Yeah, totally.
We don't bat an eye about the boys, right? So it's starting very young, very, very young.
But
right?
I do like seeing, and I see this quite a bit with tradespeople when, and I know that you brought up a point about family fitness. And it's like, when we were younger, we were always riding bikes with the clan, right? We were just going all BMX everywhere. You were just more active. Kids back then were more active.
You had to go find your friends.
Yeah, you had to literally. You couldn't call, text, or throw a rock.
You could call, but they might not pick up. It would probably faster to go find them.
But that doesn't happen today. No. But I do like seeing families, construction families, where they'll go on trips and they'll go on a specific trip. And I'm not talking about a trip that you're going to an all-inclusive kind of resort.
Yep.
I'm talking about you're going to a place that you've always wanted to go. It could be Australia, it could be Costa Rica, it could be things like that, to do an adventure.
Fun.
And they do it for the physicality of it. And they want a role model to their kids. They're going, this is what a trip should be about. And you start seeing the light in the kid's eyes where they're like really appreciating this. And you know that kid is going to do the same when they get as an adult. And that's what I think you really want to do as well too. So then you get a lot of contractors, tradespeople, they have a physical demanding job. Like you said earlier, I think what I remember my dad as he got older, and I'm less than 5 years away from him passing, is he always struggled in his last decade of life, physically wise, right? And so it's there are a lot of young trades that are coming home and they're physically exhausted.
Yeah.
And their bones are tired, their muscles are tired. And I don't think that's the image that you want your children to see. I think you want to plan your day out like you've been talking through this whole show to prepare yourself when you get home, you still have that reservoir of energy that you can still be that person of that family to help out and also be that role model to the people in your home, right, in your family, so they can go, okay, well, daddy, I know daddy's tired or mommy's tired, but they still have a little bit of energy to do something with me, right? I think that's really critical.
Role modeling any health related behaviors is the best way to teach it. It's one thing to say it, but to actually go do it, right?
It's hard as you get older.
Being a business owner, right? Like, it's easy for me to get lost in computer world and screen world, right? Like, and every once in a while, I just got to lock it away and put it away so that I can be 100% present, right? But I have to create that boundary for myself to be able to do that. Because if I hear a ding or I hear a thing, it's like,
that's right. Turn off all my notifications now. Everything's on vibrate. Yeah.
But that's really hard. Like, and I'm not going to say I'm a saint at it, but role modeling healthy living behaviors, sitting down, having breakfast, cooking, doing food related. People like, oh, everything with my family is cooking food related. Together. But I'm like, it's one thing to have food eating events together, right? Where you show up and the food is already there, but it's a total other thing to be role modeling and doing food related activities. Strawberry picking, apple picking, planting, cooking together, baking together,
very much.
Right? Because it's a skill set to be able to make food. Right. And so those really, and if you look at the Mediterranean diet, right, it's a pyramid scheme, but it's one of the healthiest diets in the world. And at the base of it, they don't have food. At the base of it, it's family activities based around food and movement and
makes sense.
Harvesting and right. So it's a culture of cultivation, right? And versus just eat this, right? But actually teaching and passing along those skills is at the base of the pyramid, which I love.
We got to get close to wrapping up, but I still have a world to ask you, like a bunch of stuff, but I do also want to let people know, and I want to get some quick thoughts on you on certain things, but without getting too disgusting, I guess, I do appreciate that on your posts, you were sharing information on the style of your poop.
Yes.
Or not the style, the design of your poop.
Yeah.
And that's the one good thing that I will say about men. They always look.
Always,
right? Because it's like an accomplishment, right? Yeah. This is what I performed. This is what I've achieved, right? But there is reason behind what that poop looks like.
Yes.
And it's really, if you want to just share a little bit about that so that people get a better understanding that you see it and you should understand it.
Yes, it can tell you a lot. Mostly about your ability to digest and absorb the foods that you're eating, because your nutritional status is based on what you're putting in your mouth, how you're able to digest it, absorb it, turn it into the things that you need to be able to turn it into, and then eliminating, right? Yeah. It's an equation, right? Yeah. And so if any one of those steps are going wrong, you're going to see it in the elimination piece, right? And because it's going to come out different than what we're looking for. So I call myself the poop lady all the time to break the ice with my younger ones. So here we go. Let's get descriptive. So you're aiming for smooth formed snake-like stool, right? It doesn't have a lot of cracks in it. It's not lumpy, and it's a uniform color, right? Brown. You might see different shades if you're taking medications. As long as it's consistent, that's probably not something to be of concern. But if you're seeing red or black or, well, iron is a very common one that will turn your stool very, very dark.
Or eating beets.
Right. Something really rich in color. You will see those changes in the color, but overall, it's going to be a brown, medium brown color, right? And then if you're getting dehydrated or not consuming enough fiber, you will start to see that lumpiness, very large, hard to pass, straining. Maybe the hemorrhoid piece gets starting to come in there because you're pushing so hard to try to pass those big, large stools, or the tiny little rabbit turds. Call them, they're balls. They're tiny little balls.
Okay.
So that is constipation, right?
Okay.
And that's an issue. Where people get confused, though, between constipation and diarrhea is that sometimes they're having seepage. So there's actually a blockage in there, but there's smears. So we call them smears, like sharts, like you're farting and you get like a little bit of stuff coming out. But then when you have a bowel movement, nothing comes out. Or it's like these balls or like these little pieces and you feel very incomplete, right? But I'm having diarrhea though. I'm like, well, so volume, right? So if you're having small bowel movements, it could be a little bit on the liquidy side, but also maybe you're getting like these harder pieces coming through. You likely have like a pseudo blockage, we call it, where like there's like this very large piece in there somewhere and we need to flush it out. So
how best is it to flush it out?
It depends on how long. That's a hard answer.
How long that's been going?
Long that's been going on. Right. So I'm not gonna dive into that in this scenario. And then on the other end, though, it becomes looser and looser. So it starts with like these fluffy pieces, it goes more to like a peanut butter consistency where it's not really formed anymore. It's very sticky. It's like, it's a mess to clean up. Think about like, the baby's diaper, right? It just kind of fills up and it sticks to everything like that. That's heading now towards the diarrhea stage and it gets light and fluffy, or then it's complete liquid. If you see undigested food, you're seeing pieces of lettuce, you're seeing like whole pieces of food coming through. Massive absorption issues where you are not absorbing the food that you're consuming or fluids. So in that situation where you're having lots of diarrhea, you're at high risk for dehydration and deficiency issues, right? So if you're not in that middle zone of that smooth snake, like there's probably something to be worked on from a nutrition perspective or hydration perspective. And, dietitians are very well equipped to do that analysis and do that whole puzzle piece and looking at the medical history and pairing everything together to see, okay, is this something internal, like a missing enzyme or something chemically wrong with your system where you're just not creating the tools to break down things, or is this an inflammatory issue where you've ate something and now, or you've got a virus and your bowel itself is inflamed. And when there's inflammation, there's just not, our bowel is a bunch of hills and valleys, right? And so if it's inflamed, there's less surface space for things to be absorbed, less time. So once certain nutrients hit the large colon, the last part of your bowel, if things hit that place and it hasn't been broken down enough, it's like an abort button. It's an evacuate, like boop, out we go, It's going. Yeah. So that's, inflammation can be a big issue there as well. So if people are having lots of bloating and lots of gas pain and, every time they eat, then within hours to follow, they're in a lot of pain, that's telling us that there's a lot of inflammation there. And, then it's our job to kind of tease it out.
So there's a lot of reasons on why when you do and you're performing your poop, something's going on.
And that's why every time you see a dietitian or nutritionist, you're going to have these questions.
Yeah, of course.
So if you book an appointment, start paying attention. So then you're not feeling like, oh my gosh, I don't know.
Well, I think you should be paying attention all the time to just get a better understanding of what's going on. Because like what you said, I love it. There was 5 of them that you're consuming it and you have to absorb it, you have to break it down. And everything that you eat has a purpose behind it. And then your body's going to react to it differently. And then when it gets out, it's going to be a certain, the go-to is the corn, right? So it's like because you didn't chew it, so then it didn't break it, and that's how it's there. But if you've seen lettuce or any other kinds of foods, then something happened in the system that should not have happened, right?
Yeah. I'm thinking of Seagal right now.
Why?
Because he does this great bit on, I didn't know everybody didn't have diarrhea on a daily basis. That is not normal, people. So
No, that's not normal. It's dangerous, actually.
it's very dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I said Seagal. No, Segura. I'm sorry. Segura. Yeah. so he does a great bit on it, and it's so funny because like unless you talk about it, that is your normal. And like you're saying, the younger guys and stuff, this is their current normal. They just don't realize that there's a different way to feel, right? Or that it could be so much better. So
and it has everything to do with what you're eating, what you're putting in your body,
how you're fueling yourself. Yeah.
I want to quickly ask you about intermittent fasting.
Okay.
Do you have a lot of clients coming at you with that?
Yes, it's a very common fad diet that people like to use as a weight loss method, trying to get that very long extended fast. I think it's a fancy, I heard you say that you're currently intermittent fasting, so I'll say it politely and gently.
I've been doing it for years.
Yes, it's a fancy way of saying I'm skipping meals.
Basically.
Yes. So it can slow down your metabolism, right? Because you're telling your body you don't have access to food except for this period of time, right? So in those times outside of it, your heart is going to pump slower, your breath rate is going to slow, your digestive system is going to slow, blood flow, circulation is not going to be as great. So there's some people, and you're like, well, I'm not feeling hungry, I'm feeling, I'm satisfied, but your body will slow down to match the caloric intake that you're consuming within that time frame, right? Mm-hmm. So depending on how extreme it is, it can... the shorter that window gets, the slower your body's going to slow down to be within that space. The other issue that can arise is that within that time frame, you have to eat a very large amount of food to be able to match your requirements.
Yeah.
Right? But your body wasn't designed to take on that load in such a short period of time. Our body only digests 30 grams of protein in like one sitting. Your pancreas can only digest a certain amount of carbohydrates in a certain meal. So if the shorter that you cram it into, the larger that single volume needs to be.
I get it, yeah, okay.
Right? To match what your physical needs are. And so it can be quite straining on the body. So you can see metabolic issues like diabetes and whatnot in those types of diets because you're stressing your pancreas and making it work harder in those moments. But tell me about your experience.
I've had no issues.
Yeah.
Like I don't, but it's also, I'm not a binge person. Mm-hmm. It's a mental, because the same amount of time I've been doing that, I've also been doing water fasting, right? Mm-hmm. So I do 7-day water fast once a year, but I might do twice a year. There was a 1 year, 4 years ago, I did it 3 times in the year.
Okay.
Right. So basically 3 weeks of the 52 weeks I didn't eat at all. Mm-hmm. But the water fasting for me, the whole process. I mean, how it starts to shift after 3 days and 4 days. And then you start getting the hunger pains a little bit on the 5th and 6th day. And then you're just finalizing on the 7th day. And I've never had an issue whatsoever. There's obviously weakness towards the last 2-3 days of it. Mm-hmm. And I'm just consuming water. That's all I'm doing. It's just consuming water, right? But then I slowly eat when I come back, right? I'm not eating huge portions because I physically can feel my stomach is smaller because everything is restricted itself, right? But I've done the physicals and the numbers are fine. Okay. Everything's good. So I didn't do is supervise because I don't respect my doctor, because whenever I go there with a problem, he's ready to give me a script.
Yes.
Right. So it's just like, I don't understand why you keep on giving me scripts. I'm just going to throw these out. Right. Because he'll give you the option of you can do this, you can do this, you can take a script, you could do a steroid shot, cortisol, whatever. You could do all kinds of shit. And I'm like, I don't want to do any of that stuff. Right. But the numbers are fine. Everything's fine. I've been constantly doing it and I haven't seen a change in any of it. But I'm also doing cold showers as well, too. So every morning is a cold shower. It's just simple as that. And then I enjoy my hot shower in the evening. So it just, I'm paying attention to the cause and effect. Sure, I still drink alcohol. Do I drink alcohol every day? No.
Right.
Maybe once or twice a week, right?
Yep.
Do I smoke? 3 times a year, maybe a cigar, right? Do I have coffee? Yeah, I have espresso for sure. I do, right? I still eat some greens, but I'm particular about it. It could be sprouts, it could be cucumber, it could be asparagus. Those are the greens that I'm eating. Fruits, yeah, I'm all about blackberries, blueberries, raspberries.
Nice.
I love eating those, popping up like candy right now.
Right.
So it's just, you get 2 containers and you wash
Yeah.
them and you put them in a glass container, put them in the fridge, and you just pick at them every so often, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I like that because they have such value to them, right?
Number 1 on my conveniently healthy foods list.
I haven't touched an apple. I haven't touched an apple in a long, long time.
Okay.
Maybe it has something to do with Bill Gates and a peel. I don't know. I've switched my apple cider vinegar to an Italian brand instead of Bragg's.
Okay.
Bragg's. Sorry, Bragg's. So, and I'm not on supplements anymore. I used to be doing a lot of supplements.
Right.
But then I started realizing, okay, what's really in these little vials? Like, I don't know how much filler, garbage, crap, or whatever. Did I notice a difference?
Right.
I don't know, right? But I also read David Sinclair's book. So you start paying attention to some of the thought process going there. I am a meat person, so I only am touching the beef, chicken, and occasionally fish.
Okay.
Right? So I'll touch salmon. That's probably the only fish. But yeah, for the most part, it's beef, and then its substitute is the chicken. Whether it's breast or thigh, it doesn't matter to me. But yeah, I load up on the meat, and then I have maybe a small veggie attached to it. And then, like I said earlier, I have my juices.
Right.
And that's it. And I do my juices religiously, so they only last 4 or 5 days.
Right.
Before they start going bad, right? But yeah, I've been doing the beets.
Okay.
And that's why I was bringing up the poop and the beep. And
Yeah.
like, I read that where it's like, be aware that your poop's going to be red. And I was like, you're not bleeding, it's the beets, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, and beets are very sweet to begin with. But yeah, I've been on the ginger as well too. The ginger is what really helped me with a friend. He was telling me about inflammation because in construction, I was having a lot of joint pain in my 40s. And then he got me on the ginger and all the joint pain went away. So
It's an anti-inflammatory.
yeah,
It's
it must have
wonderful.
did something to me there, right? So I treat it as a cause and effect. Whatever's
Right.
going on, and I'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And as long as the numbers are good,
Yeah.
then it should be fine. But I mean, occasionally, yeah, I'll have a little bit of chocolate. I'm not eating. I'll eat Hershey Kisses. That's the chocolate that I'll eat, right? I won't be eating chocolate bars or anything like that, stuff like that. But other than that, sweet wise, no, not really much.
And so what's your time frame that you're working in? Your intermittent fasting?
Oh no, I don't. About 4 to 8 o'clock. I try
4
to
to
eat
8.
before 8.
Right.
Yeah.
And so like for you, when does the hunger turn on?
It doesn't. That's the thing about it, right? So in the morning, I'll wake up and I'll have my shot of ginger, and then I mix in lemon with it.
Yep.
That's my ginger. I have a
Yeah.
glass of water first, clean,
Yeah.
because I don't want it to be empty, and then I have my shot of ginger, and then I do my exercise, and then I come back, and that's it. I start my day,
Right.
right? But I don't miss eggs because I'm having eggs with my beef,
Yeah.
right? So I still love eggs.
Right.
But yeah, I don't have any hunger. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fasting. And when I did my very first fasting, obviously they recommend that you should do 3 days and it should be supervised. I'm a guy, so then I don't do supervised and I didn't go to the doctor. I just did it, but I was aware of everything. And I was literally making notes about what was happening to my body as a result of it. You lose a lot of weight,
You do.
ridiculous amount of weight. But the unfortunate thing is you're losing muscle
Yes.
and you're losing water.
Yeah.
And I get it that it's consuming your body. That's what
Yes.
it's doing, right?
It is. Yes.
But then the Superman effect happens on the 8th day, where you, soon as you eat something for the very first time from 7 days ago, your taste buds explode, and so you're very critical about what you want to eat first because you're really going to consume every morsel of flavor out of that thing. Right. And then all of a sudden, as soon as you do that, you start to feel so much stronger at that point. And then you slowly just eat. And then now you get back on track. The poop completely disappears over the 7 days.
Yes.
Like you lose it after the first or second or something like that.
Yeah.
And then it's nothing at that point.
Right.
It feels like sometimes you want to, but it doesn't. There's nothing coming. And then as soon as you get back into the game, I think it's the 9th day or something like that, you get your poop back to normal, right?
Right.
So that's how it's been for me.
Yeah. And so you're lucky that you haven't had any issues.
What kind of issues?
Heart issues, like that can be, because when you're losing weight, you're not just losing weight externally, like what you can see, like muscle mass and fat mass on the external. Like I said, all of your organs and your bones are also created from tissue. So there's a high risk, especially if you're being active during that time, for heart arrhythmia from the damage and breakdown from the protein and muscle within the heart, right? So that would be something that I'd be concerned about. And then if it's just water, I'd be concerned about your electrolyte balance in terms of sodium and potassium and magnesium. And these are very critical electrolytes for muscle contraction and relaxation. And it's heavily used throughout the body for transport of nutrients from cell to cell and throughout the body, and electrical currents from brain to muscles, right? So when we're getting low in those, that dizziness, that weakness, it can be heavily not just from an energy input, but also from an electrolyte input too. So when people, from a marathon perspective, just to give you perspective, have you ever heard of people like just dropping?
Yeah.
So that's from hypokalemia. That's a low potassium level, right? So if you're not consuming any of that, but then you're still exercising, still moving and grooving, there's going to be losses of that as well. So you'd be at big risk for electrolyte changes. And that's something that's very transient, meaning that it happens acutely in a short period of time. So like in a 4-hour race, somebody can go from good stores down to 0, right? So that would be a big risk of the big fasting times that you're doing. And if you were to come into hospital, let's say in a different scenario, and you had been admitted for a different reason, one of the things we ask is, when was the last time you actually ate? Because the way that we would fuel you, reestablish, right? It's good that you are taking your time getting back into food after that, because if you weren't as knowledgeable and you just heard somebody saying, oh, I did this 7-day fast, but they didn't do the research behind it and then just started eating, you can go into something called refeeding syndrome, where you're now taking those electrolytes and sending them crazy.
It's funny you bring that up, because I was dating somebody who did a colonoscopy. So you have to have a fast for a period of time before you do that. And she prepared for everything. It was going through the thing. And all of a sudden she went through the procedure. She felt fine. Then did the procedure. Everything was good. Then all of a sudden it was the next day and we're like going, what do we want to do for dinner? So I was like, it's your choice, whatever. And she chose pasta and some meal. But within an hour or two, she started feeling off, like dramatically off. And her body was collapsing. And it was like really, really scary. Like she was lethargic. She was just like, something's going on here. So I literally picked her up, rushed her to the hospital. We got to the hospital, went through that whole procedure with the doctors, and she had a problem with needles and she didn't want to be put into an IV. And I'm looking at her going, either they put you on an IV and start getting fluids into your body, or you fucking die. You choose. Can you make a decision, please? And she was just lightheaded and passing out, in and out. And then eventually she agreed to it. And then within, I would say 10 or 15 minutes, she started feeling much better, asking what happened. And I was like, you were basically, that's what was happening. Yeah. Her body was reacting that way because it was so empty. Yeah. And then all of a sudden she filled it up I never touched pasta afterwards. Yeah. Never touch anything heavy, big, never a huge portion of meat. Never. It's a slow process back in. And I've always done that just from the research that I looked into, and I just wanted to be cautious of it, right? But I've always I'm still conscious. I know a lot of people do the electrolytes, and that's the one thing they tell me, and I just I'm so fixated on the water. Maybe I'll start doing juice fasting instead, so then I'm consuming juices during that period of time. But yeah, I'm back to cause and effect. I just looked at what's cause and effect. And I mean, am I as strong or as active as I was in a 20-year-old? No, you're 30 years older. Right. So there's still certain things there. I think the next step for me is to try to find a nice stable balance of physical activity where I can still gain muscle mass. Right. Because you start looking at older people and those threats of losing muscle mass is really the critical things.
It is.
That's what's going to hurt your body.
And that would be really hard for you to maintain in a 4-hour window, right? Because again, your body only absorbs 30 grams of carbs in like a 2-hour window.
Yeah.
So if you're only eating protein in 2 meals or 1 meal, but you're eating your day's worth, you're only going to use 30 grams of that. The rest of it's just going to be used for energy.
Yeah.
So if you were to spread that out a little bit more across the board, then your consumption and absorption of protein would go from 30 grams to actually, 90, 60, 120, right? Yeah. So you would be able to get a lot more protein absorbed. Yes, you're consuming it, but are you actually absorbing it? Assimilating it, turning it into muscle tissue. And that's where you would absorb it, but the actual converting it into muscle tissue would not be happening with all of the protein that you're eating in that small short window.
It wouldn't.
You're not using it to the
I'd have to open up that window then somehow.
Yes. And so the easiest way, and you're saying, well, I'm not feeling hungry. No, I wouldn't suspect that you're feeling hungry. You've been eating this way for a very long time.
Yeah.
So you've lost the ability to feel that hunger, right? Because if you stayed in that state, you wouldn't be able to function, right? So your body starts to ignore that feeling, right? But I bet if you just on a random blue moon, when you're in Turkey, for example, you're just recently in Turkey, when you're having, was your schedule a little different?
So
you stayed the same.
No, I didn't. So that's the problem is that when I was in Turkey, I was eating 3 times a day. And it was weird. Because I felt more full during every day.
Yeah.
And then just for shits and giggles, I got back home and weighed myself and I was exactly the same weight the whole time. But a lot of that had to do with, I can't even imagine what kind of step count I had.
Yes.
And then you're walking around in 30-degree weather.
Yes.
And I wasn't.
But if you want to be exercising more and you do want to be doing some strength training, how are you going to fuel for that? Because I'm telling you right now, if you add that in and you're not fueling around that time, then you're just going to break down muscle, right? You're not going to actually form any new muscle. You might lose weight, but it won't be necessarily all fat.
I totally agree with you. I think if I want to get back to some sort of muscle strength in my life, in my physical, I can't do intermittent. It's impossible. Yes. I'll have to wake up and eat eggs or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? I'll have to have those protein, so that I can fuel myself.
A little bit more regularly.
Totally
and it's a very good thing. I like that you're bringing up that, the muscle atrophy that happens later in life. And it's not just women that are going through menopause, but also men.
Oh, men go through
through a massive drop, and it's a big push actually in the nutrition world and in terms of muscle maintenance, right? And so frequent intake regularly throughout the day is the number one strategy for that, to ensure that what you're consuming is actually being turned into muscle mass, to prevent the atrophy. It's very hard to grow more muscle, but as we age, trying to maintain it.
That's the tricky part.
Is the tricky part, yes. So.
I got to do the 12 questions here.
Oh, right.
I appreciate it. And then Kim Doyle again. Find them at Brant Nutrition, and also on their website is www.brantnutrition.com, and reach out to her and the team, 519-771-0774. I love these conversations.
Yeah, this is great.
Because I think the older people listen and the younger people, until something happens and then they realize.
And they're like, oh, where was that podcast?
Let me have a conversation with somebody. I'll reach out to somebody and have a conversation with somebody. What is let's do just nutrition. We'll change the word to nutrition.
I did when you gave me the heads up there. I thought about it from both perspectives. So
what is your favorite nutrition word or phrase?
Get enough.
It's a good one.
Yep.
Least favorite tool?
So I wanted to give the construction one because it's funny. Wrench, because my hands are not big enough for the adjustable wrench. when you have to, they get the one, they're just like flipping it like in between the different levels.
Channel locks. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Channel locks. So then
they're so hard, and so
they expand, right? Yeah.
Oh, they're so hard for me to manipulate. But anyways, from a nutrition perspective, scale. A scale is. Scale? I hate scales. They're just.
I agree with you. I think people too much emphasis on that stupid number.
It de-emphasizes all the other good things that are happening, right? So
if everything's going well and you feel great, and then you step on that scale and
all of a sudden, all that makes all of that other stuff disappear.
It doesn't make any sense. What do you miss from your childhood?
recovery time, the shortness of it.
We're all Wolverines.
Right?
We're all
the
Wolverines.
bounce back.
When we're younger.
Like I miss my bounce back.
Hate that. Nowadays, when you get her, you're like, how long is this going to take?
Yeah. Right. I would love the flexibility of my hip back. That would be great.
What nutrition? Well, that makes no sense. What construction sound do you love?
Chainsaw. It makes me think about Tool Time from Tim Allen. I watched that a lot when I was a kid. And, oh, yeah. Right? Like, you hear the chainsaw go, I just hear it, and I just like, want to look at somebody. I want to call my dad and go, right?
That's a good one. What's your favorite beverage?
Yeah, really, I'm such a loser. Room temp water. Like I like not too cold, right? Like I just, because it will hurt my teeth, but like just chugging back a big thing of water.
That's something these younger people don't understand. Sensitive teeth.
Yeah. I had too much orange juice when I was younger.
What turns you on and off in nutrition?
So in nutrition, so the on is the aha moment. There's always this moment.
Yeah.
In session, down the, 3 or 4, and things are just starting to click, and like I feel great, like I'm feeling so energetic, and I haven't had that feeling in a long time, and it sounded a little crazy at first, but I'm starting to, like, it's just clicking and it's getting easier, right? Like they're in a flow. There's the behavioral side of it, the tasks.
It's true.
So that aha moment is really awesome to see, right?
Yeah.
When they come in and you can just tell it's the day, right? They're coming in, they got a smile on their face. So that, I love those moments.
Off
is just in general diet culture. It just annoys me. It's a big
Everyone
battle in my world.
Onto something,
yeah, right. It's always constantly something that I'm having to re-educate about, right? And myth bust, and it slows me down.
Mm-hmm.
It slows me down in the way that it impacts people's mental health. It's hard to watch, and I used to be there, so I get it. I wasn't always the way in the perspective that I am now, and so I sympathize for the people and empathize for those that are still there, right? And still being impacted the way that I used to be, and just seeing the struggle that goes along with that, it just irks me, and I know where it stems from, but it's such a big system that it's a very daunting task, right? So
marketing. What is your favorite curse word?
I think I said it today. Shit. But you got to hang on the SH and the hard T, and I get that from my husband and his mom. So it's got to be a shit.
Actually, yeah, it's a better way of saying it. What's your favorite vehicle? Any mode of transportation?
So I think I've never ridden one. Well, I've ridden one once. I think I would love a motorcycle, but I'm a little scared, right? So like the whole road thing, right? Like people hitting you and everything.
You just gotta be scared of someone hitting you. That's all.
But I have ridden jet skis, and I freaking love jet skis.
I've never been on a jet ski.
You've never been on? Okay, if you like motorcycle, oh okay.
I grew up on Jaws. I saw Jaws when I was like 12. I shouldn't have seen
There's
Jaws.
no sharks in the cold.
Doesn't matter. It's black water. I can't see below it.
Right.
I don't need to see it.
I don't like to be in the water, like very long.
Yeah, but
I'll
on
go
a jet
jump
ski,
in,
if you start getting a little, adventurous,
yes,
you can get thrown off the jet ski.
Go on a clear day. The water's glass. And you go skipping through there and like just cutting through the water. And it's so like, I imagine that is what a motorcycle feels like.
Yeah, probably.
At times. Not as much side to side, but the stability of it I love. And I really do enjoy going fast because I'm like a roller coaster fiend, and I love that kind of thing. So I really do like a jet ski, but yeah.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt one day?
Psychotherapy. So it's definitely
You're
on
doing part of it, no? Or already?
Well, like in the field that I'm in mental health, I have to do a lot of counseling training in terms of learning how to help people with anxiety, depression, PTSD, trauma, right? Like it's you can't just tell them what to do, right? Because it's so much more than eat this, eat that, right? So you have to do so much digging and so much understanding about where these food ideas came from that I feel like a lot of times I'm halfway there. So I would love to just kind of make it full circle and get the background, go through like the university process and get the fundamentals more sound, right? Of what's the appropriate approach from a mental health perspective. I like, obviously I've learned a lot, and I'm not the newbie dietitian heading into this world of mental health, but I feel like if I had that final step, that would make my ability as a dietitian, but then I think I have that niche of being able to listen and people feeling comfortable talking to me.
Get a better understanding of the person.
Yeah. And a lot of the times, I have sessions that we talk maybe 5 minutes about nutrition. And so I feel like I'm already sometimes in that role without, advertising myself that way. So I would like to make that official one day. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
What profession would you not like to do?
So I had 2 ideas for this one. Being tied in with construction plumber, I think that's the.
No, it could be any. It could be any.
I know,
career.
but this is just straight up plumber. Like my husband will go and do that hair pull drain thing, and just that alone, I'm like, what? Right?
You can't handle that.
I can't handle it. The worst part of my job as a dietitian was like people that have ostomies. One time I've seen it being changed. Poop came out at the same time. And I just think about that, dealing with that on it. Oh, I wouldn't be able to do it. And then elementary school teacher, I don't like multiple conversations at one time. I'm not very good at handling external noise. Like right now it's nice and quiet, there's not external things. I'm easily distracted in that. So like if I have more than one person trying to get my attention at one time, you're going to see a very different Kim very quickly.
Last question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at those pearly gates?
Woo! High five. Ric Flair style.
Thanks so much, Kim. I really appreciate you taking the time coming in and educating everybody here. I'm sure that they're going to listen, and hopefully they reach out to you and talk to you some more, right?
Thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to come back anytime.
For sure. Love to have you back. Thank you again. That's it. We're out of here, Angeline.